We are less than a week away from the MLB trade deadline, and the pressure is on for Dave Dombrowski. But a familiar Phillies name continues to rise in the rumor mill, with Nick Castellanos' name being mentioned in trade reports. I want to break down the latest for what we know on the situation, if Castellanos' future in Philadelphia is truly in doubt, and what this type of move could look like for the Phillies here. We do have a specific team that is seemingly to be interested in the Phillies right fielder. To want to dive into exactly what this could mean here and why I think this might cause a couple more problems than it actually solves for this Phillies team. Now let's dive right into it here, but before I do want to remind you guys as always to make sure you are hitting that subscribe button. At this point in time, 77.1% of you guys watching these videos have not subscribed to us here at Phillies Digest. We got a lot to get into these next couple days and well beyond as this Phillies team bolsters up for a deep playoff run, we hope, and we will see if Nick Castellanos is a part of it or not. So I do want to start off with, this is a name that we've sort of talked about since the offseason, that we've heard these whispers of Nick Castellanos being mentioned in trade reports. It has never been something that has fully made sense to me, but they just keep coming. As recently as we have from Jim Bowden here saying, quote, "The Castellanos rumors just never go away, and for that reason alone, multiple GMs thinks there's a chance that he could get moved if Philadelphia can find a better right field option." And this is where I want to interject on the conversation, is that is exactly where you start to lose me. I understand that Nick Castellanos is not perfect. He certainly has his flaws as a baseball player. He's not going to be winning any gold gloves anytime soon, and the power numbers have taken a bit of a decline. But the grass is not always greener, and I struggle to find the pathway to improving in right field, and especially the case with all the other problems in the outfield. Say what you want about Nick Castellanos, but he has been the stability for this outfield unit. Max Kepler has not delivered. Brandon Marsh and Johan Rojas have not been good enough in center field there. We have not gotten a look at Justin Crawford getting an MLB opportunity just yet, and I think moving on from the one guy who's been a solid force in the outfield could be a mistake if there is not a clear upgrade there. And again, I struggle to see what that clear upgrade could be. Now, we did get a specific name attached to the reports now, as the deadline rumors, the Royals, quote, "might consider Nick Castellanos if available." And the full write-up here, this coming from Destiny Lizardo here saying, "The Phillies love Quan. The Royals might consider Nick Castellanos if available." John Heyman of the New York Post, in his latest notes column, connected the Phillies to Guardians left fielder Stephen Kwan, 27, is batting .287 with a .762 OPS. Cleveland is at .500 and are 3 games out of the wild card spot in the American League. Kwan is under team control through 2027. Heyman also added that the Kansas City Royals are looking for an outfielder who can hit and think they, quote, "might consider Nick Castellanos if available." Castellanos, a perpetual trade candidate, is batting .269 with a .742 OPS. The Phillies need to add, not subtract, from the offense. Moving on from Castellanos would require the Phillies to make an even bigger move to replace his bat in the middle of the lineup. And again, this is where you lose me. This is not an addition by subtraction type of situation where they need to get Nick Castellanos out of there. Again, say what you want about the guy. He is not perfect, but I also will not forget that you have to ride the hot and cold streaks, and we've seen both on plenty of occasions here in Philadelphia. But Nick Castellanos was the most consistent bat in this Phillies lineup last playoffs, and that should not be noted. Now, to reflect on what he's brought to the table this season, has not been quite up to the standard that we hope. 13 home runs, 55 RBIs, a .310 on-base percentage there across his 387 at-bats, 104 hits there, a slugging percentage of just .432. Not quite these stellar numbers that you hope for, and the biggest selling point, the biggest what I think could be pushing Dave Dombrowski to at least explore this opportunity here, is the contract on it. And to pull that up exactly with Nick Castellanos, is he still has 1 year remaining at $20 million. Yes, he signed the 5-year, $100 million deal when he first did come to Philadelphia here, and I do wonder if this is connected to the Kyle Schwarber conversation. We have not been privy to any sort of information on what the holdup is for several months to this point, anything of substance, I would say, on the Kyle Schwarber reporting. Obviously, he remains unsigned and is set to be a free agent this summer, and Schwarber certainly should be the priority over Nick Castellanos with that. If this is a type of set up that move where this can get you to a number, or get you to a number of years in which you're comfortable with Schwarber, which means you have to get rid of Castellanos now, I hear that, but I also don't quite believe that to be the full story there. Again, you need multiple players on a baseball team here. This is not a one-for-one comparison, a one-in, one-out type of spot, and yes, we've seen Kyle Schwarber play play left field, but I don't expect that to be happen anytime in the foreseeable future. Unless, of course, there is some sort of big time trade that does pop to the mainstream and come to fruition here. And there is an interesting name that I did want to bring into the mix here. First, I'm going to start off with Steven Kwan, who, of course, that was mentioned in that article here. And to pull up the numbers from Kwan so far this year, 8 home runs, 35 RBIs, a 352 on-base percentage here, a 410 slugging, so the same as Castellanos. He is younger at 27, a little bit more team control there. He has 108 hits over his 376 at-bats. I like Steven Kwan. I think he's a good baseball player. I don't think he's the solution for what the Phillies need. If anything, my biggest argument right now is the more power, the better. I think that is the solution. Well, we know we have the pitching, at least the starting pitching at this time of the game for this Phillies team, and the bats are heating up. Kyle Schwarber on an absolute heater. Bryce Harper looks like Bryce Harper again. JT Realmuto has woken up out of nowhere and is mashing home runs. I'm recording this after the blowout victory by the Phillies with the Yankees. I think 12-5 was the finish of tonight's game here. A great game to watch there, and that home run from JT Realmuto felt like the hardest I've seen him in a baseball in years to this point. It is nice to see a little bit of a resurgence there, and I do think that is a storyline to monitor heading into the offseason, as well as JT's a guy who's also an impending free agent. And again, for JT specifically here, I understand he is not what he once was as far as a production at the plate guy. When you look around the rest of the MLB at the catcher position, there's not a lot of room to go from an upgrade perspective there, and I do wonder if we will be talking about a potential extension here in Philadelphia. I was completely against that coming into the season. My mind is starting to open up, but to keep it on the Castellanos vision here and really the trade deadline outlook, there's another name that I think has climbed into a bit more likely attainable trade target, and this is a guy that would fire me up as far as this is a needle-moving trade. And that name exactly here, to pull up from John Heyman, he tweets, Phillies are yet another potential fit for Eugenio Suarez. With Bohm out and a need for a righty bat, the Yanks, Mariners, Cubs, Reds, Astros, Tigers, and Brewers are also fit. So obviously a lot of names being thrown in the mix here, but I love the lead with the Phillies, and the Yankees are now out of the mix after making a trade already today and adding the third baseman of their choice here. Now, Eugenio Suarez here, to pull up the numbers on him, that is a guy that will wow you. To look at the raw numbers on the year, 36 home runs. That is the exact same number as Kyle Schwarber, if I'm not mistaken. 86 RBIs here, a 325 on-base percentage, a 593 slugging percentage. He's walked 29 times, 93 hits across his 369 at-bats, 34 years old, so on the older side here, and I understand the positional fit is a concern, that he's primarily a third baseman, can play shortstop as well, and obviously those are two spots in which you'd have to get a bit creative here. I think third base is the outcome here, and I know we talked about Alec Bohm trade rumors for plenty this offseason. Truthfully, I don't see any sort of noise or any sort of likelihood until that coming to fruition for him being moved away from the Phillies currently, but I do think you can get creative in a way of, what if Bryce Harper is open to hopping back in the outfield? And then maybe you shift Alec Bohm to first base. You can play Suarez at third base there. Or maybe you do put Kyle Schwarber back out in left field, move Bryce Harper to a DH role. You can still do that third and first base flip where you do slide Bohm over there, who fields a very good first base, to be perfectly honest there. This type of power is something that I think is necessary within the Phillies lineup. That is the needle-moving type of trade that I need to see. And that is the biggest message that I want to send as we begin to inch closer to this trade deadline here, is I need Dave Dombrowski to stop digging through the bargain bin. The reputation of Dave Dombrowski since he got to Philadelphia here is this is a guy who's going to be a gunslinger. He's going to make that big trade. He's going to empty the farm system to improve this current team, and that's really not what we've seen played out in front of us. That I don't need to see another Austin Hayes. I know what Brandon Marsh was. We've seen Carlos Estevez, who was better than a lot of people remember. What I want to see from Dave Dombrowski is him getting active in a way that directly improves this Phillies team. That makes me wake up on once July is over, when it is August 1st and the trade deadline dust has settled, that I'm saying the Philadelphia Phillies are more serious World Series contenders than I felt when I went to bed last night. That is how I want to feel following the trade deadline, and we have not had Dave Dombrowski step to the plate with that sense of urgency at the trade deadline just yet. This is not to say Dombrowski's done a bad job. He's got to deserve, and he earned his flowers for signings like Kyle Schwarber there. Even some little moves like trading for a Jose Alvarado for practically nothing there. He's made some nice moves and done a good overall job, But it's time for this Phillies team to go from good to great, and that responsibility falls solely on the shoulders of Dave Dombrowski at this point in time. I don't believe that Nick Castellanos being traded is something that would improve this Phillies team unless there's a notable upgrade there, and I do fail to see it. I think this is a one-for-one swap, and obviously this is not exactly how a trade would go down, but if it was a Steven Kwan for Nick Castellanos trade, I think that makes the Phillies worse, to be perfectly honest with you. You can debate me in a vacuum that Steven Kwan is a better baseball player and that there's more financial flexibility, team control. You could run down the list of this, but if we're just talking about the chances of winning a World Series this year, which is what I'm fully interested in with this Phillies team, I think Nick Castellanos has the edge in that conversation, and I would have a really hard time moving on from him unless I feel differently about that. We will see what ultimately unfolds. There is a lot to get into over these next couple days. Me and Luke Arcane are going to be all over on the channel here on Phillies Digest, so make sure you guys are tapping in. We're talking about doing getting a stream loading. We're figuring out the details, figuring out the timeline, but we're going to be covering things from all angles come trade deadline time. So make sure you guys are tapped in for that, and the best way by doing so is by smashing that subscribe button there. Once again, only 22.9% of you guys watching these videos have subscribed to us here at Phillies Digest just yet. We appreciate all the support, are very excited about what is still to come, so appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you have not already, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video here, your comments below. I'll be back talking with you next time. Peace.